the lineup is a lot shorter and Jazz Chisholm Jr. is having a lot more important at-bats, and the conversation comes a lot more on him, sort of like an Austin Wells, who's batting fourth on the lineup and doesn't necessarily deserve the criticism he's getting right now, but still is getting the criticism.
You are Locked On Yankees, your daily New York Yankees podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On Yankees, which is part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thank you for making us your first listen every day. I am one of your hosts, Stacey Gotsoulias. This episode is brought to you by Prize Picks. Download the app today and use code LOCKEDONMLB to win $50 instantly when you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks, run your game. With me as usual, my co-host, Brian McKeon. Brian.
2-0, and it feels so good.
It does feel good compared to the last ALCS they were in when they were down 0-2 at this point. So this is a good feeling. Before we get started, don't forget, subscribe to the podcast on whichever podcasting platform you prefer. Subscribe to our channel on YouTube, like our videos, hit the bell so you know when those videos go live. On today's show, Gleyber Torres got help from an unexpected source and turned his season around. We'll preview the pitching matchup in Game 3 and discuss what the Yankees have to do to win in Cleveland. But first, let's discuss how the Yankees have done so far in the playoffs and what we think they need to do better, if anything.
Yes, I think for my biggest thing is winning games and finding ways to win games without needing the home run ball. That's the way they've been this entire year. And I think there's a lot to be said about that in playoff games specifically, right? Like you need to be able to, like, that's been a problem over the last few years of the Yankees, I think, in the playoffs, where they've depended on the home run ball. And when they don't get the home run ball, it's like, oh, we're going to lose. That's how it went. Whereas now and whether it's creating runs off errors or of other teams' mistakes, whatever it may be, those things are still happening and they're still taking advantage of them. Those are the way championship teams win games, win playoff games. Again, like we made the point yesterday, and I think it holds true. You're not going to win every game with 3 grand slams and your pitcher going 8 innings, and that's not how things work. Unfortunately, games get messy. It's not going to be perfect all the time. You sometimes, for cross-sport reference, you need your goalie to stand on his head. And that's what the Yankees have been doing this postseason for the most part. It has not been by the home run ball. They really haven't had do they have a home run in this postseason that gave them the lead or tied a game? I don't think so. I think it's only been home runs that have padded on late. Like I think the Jazz home run was padding on late. The Judge home run padding on late. The Soto one was adding on to more runs. I don't think there was a home run that necessarily tied a game or gave them a lead, which is key to think about. Maybe Stanton had one, but it's key to consider that they're not dependent on the home run. They take it when it comes, but they're not dependent on it. And that is really key for a championship level team.
Right. And you had mentioned the mistakes that the other teams are making, and it doesn't always work out where you capitalize on those mistakes. But the Yankees have so far this playoff season, which is great because like you said, they've struggled so much in recent playoff years, depending too much on the 9-run home run, swinging out of their shoes, playing uncharacteristically tight in a way to where they change their approach so much that they just look awful at the plate. And they're not doing that. They're walking a lot. They may not capitalize on some of those guys walking, and they still have a little bit of a struggle with runners in scoring position. But I'm seeing much better at bats from a few guys. Let's talk about Volpe just for a second. I mean, the difference between regular season Volpe and playoff Volpe is night and day right now.
I think it has a lot to do with other guys on the team having really good postseasons, right? It's kind of, in a weird way, there's not a microscope under Volpe now. There's no spotlight on him. He's kind of hidden in this lineup, and that's the point that we made all year with guys being healthy and lengthening this lineup. It hides guys lower in the lineup where, you can get away with not having a great postseason or having a great postseason and it not really being noticed because they're not the focus of conversation, right? Stanton's the focus of conversation. Judge's struggles, which, part of signing a 9-year deal and being named the captain is when you struggle, the microscope's going to be on you and you have to be able to get through that. But Judge's struggles, that those have been storylines this postseason. Whereas Volpe, who's been really good, has kind of been a lesser of a storyline. No one's really noticed it very much. Another player on the flip side who struggled that also has not really been talked about Jazz Chisholm Jr. Jazz Chisholm Jr., other than the one home run, which was a garbage time home run, it was a tack-on run, has been terrible. Like, case in point, he's just been awful. He has not had a good postseason. He has not been great. He's booted a couple balls in the field. He hasn't had a great postseason in the field. Hasn't had a great postseason at the plate. But those struggles get masked. And for a player like that who isn't a superstar, who isn't on that big contract, who isn't expected to figure things out at any moment, right? Like Aaron Judge, because of the contract and the captaincy and everything like that, he's going to get all the criticism. But part of being given that contract and part of being named the captain is also the Yankees knowing he can handle that criticism. He can get through it. He can deal with that. He can hear it and he can get through it. All of that. Jazz Chisholm Jr., you don't know if he can handle that kind of stuff. You don't know if all these guys can handle that kind of stuff. And being buried deeper in the lineup, in a longer lineup, the conversation's not on Jazz. Jazz can do his own thing and not have to field 30, 40 questions after a game on his struggles. Whereas if it's Judge struggling, if Stanton's out, if Soto's not here, the lineup is a lot shorter and Jazz Chisholm Jr. is having a lot more important at-bats and the conversation comes a lot more on him, sort of like an Austin Wells, who's batting fourth on the lineup and doesn't necessarily deserve the criticism he's getting right now, but still is getting the criticism. So I think the lengthening of the lineup is huge, both for players that are playing really well, but also players who are struggling.
Right. So against the Royals, the bullpen was a strength, obviously. I mean, the bullpen's basically been a strength the entire time because they've gone 5-1 so far in this postseason. So, a few guys have stepped up. As you spoke about on yesterday's show, the circle of trust has shrunk, and there really only seems to be about 4 guys that Boone feels like putting into games at the moment. We'll see if that changes in this series. But I like what I'm seeing from the bullpen because I saw, I think it was a TikTok or a reel where someone was asking Yankee fans before one of the playoff games, I think against KC, like an opinion that would get people mad at them. And this one guy basically came out and said, the bullpen sucks. And I thought that was interesting because the video came out while the bullpen has been pretty much lights out during the playoffs. And I thought that was funny because I was like, it's actually been a little bit of a while since the bullpen's been bad. And are you guys watching the same games as us? What is happening here? Your mic's muted.
I don't know how that happened.
Yeah.
I did mute it for a second, but it's better now. What scares me about the bullpen is the fact that if you get later on to the postseason, if these series go longer and these arms are used more and more and more, and if you play, they need a blowout game on either side just to not use these arms in every single game. I was actually, the friend that I was with at game 2 made the point of, do you bring Weaver in here just because it's a 4-run lead to try and preserve his arm a little bit? And I do agree with Boone's move where it's all hands on deck. You're not at this point, you don't screw around. If it's less than a 5-run game, Weaver's coming in. That's it. You don't screw around. However, especially with how this postseason's been with the grand slams and everything, you don't mess around. But if this gets longer and longer into the postseason, say this series goes 7 and you need to keep using bullpen arms, and every single game you're using your bullpen arms, guys' arms fall apart. Their arms are going to die off. It's been a long year for these guys. You know, Canley's coming off a couple of injury-riddled seasons, coming back. He's in that circle of trust, but, he's coming off a couple of injury-riddled seasons. Tim Meza has great outings and has poor outings. Luke Weaver hasn't pitched this much in his career ever before. So there's a lot of question marks. You kind of want to be able to skate through the postseason without having these questions be brought up. But where do the Yankees turn if one of these guys goes down or one of them struggles? Because clearly, Ian Hamilton's out of that circle of trust. Yeah. I don't think he trusts Stroman to come in and get an inning for him. There's a lot of questions when it comes to the bullpen.
You meant Tim Hill.
Yeah, Tim Hill. I don't know why I said Tim Meza. Yeah.
Well, because it's confusing to have 2 Tims who I think they throw with the same arm, don't they? Yeah. In the bullpen.
Yeah, but one of them has not so much of a flattering mustache, and the other doesn't.
Yeah, that's that's Tim Hill. Just in case you guys are.
We'll discuss it in the offseason. I think we need to do maybe a week's worth of shows on it, though, is the mustache.
Just his or everyone's, like Wells and Nestor.
Yeah, we gotta have a conversation about
that. It's interesting to see the difference in the starting rotation the differences between how the guys performed against KC and how they're performing so far against Cleveland, because Cole had the 2 iffy starts against KC, but then was lights out in that final game against them. Rodon had that 1 bad inning, but other than the 1 bad inning, he's looked incredible against both KC and Cleveland.
That's a narrative I want to bring up, though. It's so unfair what people say about Carlos Rodon. He's a Yankee free agent that came here. I'm not a Carlos Rodon apologist or anything, but Stacey, it almost feels like people didn't watch his Game 2 performance against the Royals. It almost feels that way, because every time you hear anyone talk about Carlos Rodon, he was garbage in that Kansas City game. He wasn't. He was garbage for that 4th inning. He was not good. And really, he started off the inning fine. It was just things started to unravel and it fell apart for him. But Stacey, I know you watched that game as intently as I did. I was there. He was electric for the first 3 innings. I mean, you started that show that night saying that might be the best 3-inning stretch we've ever seen Carlos Rodon look in a Yankee uniform. I think he looked better in those 3 innings than he did in the Game 1 of the Cleveland series. I really do.
Great in Game 1 against Cleveland. Yeah.
So it's just the narratives that we develop as Yankee fans are sometimes just so ludicrous.
Yep. Let's push the starting lineup conversation into segment 2, and then we'll preview Game 3. And then we'll talk about what we think the Yankees need to do in order to win Game 3. But first, don't forget, subscribe to the channel, hit the like button on our videos, hit the notification so you know when our videos go up. And you can join the Locked On Yankees Insiders Club. The link is in the description. You'll get text from us. You can text us questions, comments. I had plenty of reactions to the game on Tuesday night, which were interesting to see. We send out the lineups, roster moves, breaking news, so you don't have to check social media. You get a text. It's fun. There's a 14-day free trial. Coming up, previewing Game 3's pitching matchup, talking about what the Yankees need to do to win, and talking about how the starting lineup has done so far in the playoffs.
PrizePicks is America's #1 daily fantasy sports app with over 5 million active members. PrizePicks is the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. And unlike other apps, on PrizePicks, it's just you against the numbers. All you do is pick more or less on 2 to 6 player stat projections and watch the winnings roll in. You can now win up to 100 times your money on PrizePicks with as little as 4 correct picks. Want to play PrizePicks alongside Drewski, Joe Budden, and MMA champ Sugar Sean O'Malley? You can now find community plays under the promos tab of the app to view entries from some of the biggest names in the PrizePicks community each week. PrizePicks puts their members first. So with all withdrawals, they're fast, safe, and secure. When my picks hit, I get my money in as quick as 15 minutes. Download the PrizePicks app today and use code LOCKEDONMLB to get $50 instantly when you play $5. That's code LOCKEDONMLB on PrizePicks to get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. PrizePicks, run your game. Don't forget that you can catch every pitch of the Yankees hometown broadcast on SiriusXM. Just download the SXM app and search the word Yankees. Stacey, we're back, and the starting lineup for the Yankees really been flip-floppy, right? There's been guys that have had great postseasons, guys that have struggled. I do want to mention, based in the last segment on the facial hair conversation, I'm also being bothered by the Yankees, which is weird that facial hair is a topic when it comes to the Yankees, but I'm growing out a playoff beard in my best efforts to push the Yankees towards a championship. And it's getting way too scruffy and way too long, and it's really bothering me. So can we end this postseason preferably quicker with the championship so I can shave? I'm just putting that out there in the universe.
I don't have that problem.
Yeah, clearly, but it's very frustrating. I'm doing my part, all right, guys? I'm not on the team. I can't hit home runs, but I'm doing my part for the team. The starting lineup, I think there's plenty of storylines actually going around with each individual player throughout this entire lineup. There's guys who have had – I feel like – nobody on this lineup is having an average postseason. Everybody has been great or is really struggling, which is very strange.
Yeah. Yeah. And, all things considered, as sloppy as they've run the bases, how as badly as they've done with runners in scoring position, the pitching is really held up. They've scored enough runs to win, and they're 5-1 in the postseason so far.
Hard to complain about that. I love what I've seen out of Gleyber so far. I do. Judge over the last 3 games has really been a productive player, right? He's got sack flies, he's got RBIs. The home run obviously changes the tune on a lot of things, but it does feel like when the postseason got here, people started to forget that Judge does so much besides hit the home run ball.
Mm-hmm.
And including sacrifice flies, including working the count, including getting walks at opportune times. He was doing all those things at the start of the postseason, but no one realized it because he wasn't hitting home runs.
Right.
And it does. I know it is a thing that the casual fan now tunes in during the postseason. So a lot of the casual fans that have their voice out there that are complaining that know that, oh, Judge hit 58 home runs. Where's the long ball? He stinks. When there's a lot of things that he's doing out there that aren't necessarily the game before in game 1, before the massive home run in game 2, he had an RBI sac fly. In game 2 at the start of that game, had another RBI sac fly. And like you've mentioned too, there's been plenty of games in this postseason where he's hit balls to the track, deep balls that get caught, and those things don't show up on the stat sheet. So he's been figuring it out really since game 3 of the Royals series, which feels unfair to his postseason. I just wanted to ask you on that because it does feel like you get a lot of the casuals that jump in now, and they don't necessarily, their voices are loud, but not necessarily fair.
Right. I think I said it on yesterday's show. If he were swinging and missing all the time and like finishing the games 0 for 4 with 3 strikeouts and just looking lost at the plate, I would be a little more concerned. But he's made solid contact pretty much in every game. It just the luck hasn't really gone his way. Like some balls get caught up in the wind, or sometimes he just hits it to the wrong part of the field and someone's there and they're playing him perfectly. And I could see things starting to change against Kansas City. And I figured he was going to break out at some point, and I'm hoping that Tuesday night's game was the start of the breaking out. So
let's certainly hope so. Because other than that, he's been terrific. He really has in the field, especially too. He's made a lot of balls in the gap. And those plays, get forgotten really quickly. And they really shouldn't, because making a play on a ball in a gap when that can turn into a double or second and third with no outs, huge plays that he's made a multiple amount of them in the postseason so far and been great. The other guy who needs compliments, before we get into one guy that's struggling, is Giancarlo Stanton. And again, we've mentioned this a bunch of times, but it needs to keep getting mentioned. The amount of flack that he catches daily throughout the year is not fair, and he's had a terrific postseason. He really has been unbelievable. The long ball, it's to the point now too where now he's another guy teams have to focus on. He's another guy that you have to, you're thinking about 2 or 3 batters before he comes up, because how are we going to pitch to him, or how are we going to pitch to Judge because Stanton comes up in 2 batters. It's those things, guys playing as well as they are when it's in Stanton's situation, it creates so much length, right? It's so valuable to your team. And this storyline's been a big storyline today, and I want to see what you think about it. People have asked Boone, and he really hasn't given a straight answer on what they're going to do with Austin Wells. People want him sat for Trevino. People want Austin Wells moved down in the lineup and Stanton moved up. Which one do you feel like? I think there's very much potential that with a lefty pitching for Cleveland, Austin Wells could be seeing the bench for game 3. How do you feel?
I think it's only because it's a lefty. I think that we spoke about this on yesterday's show as well. His last at-bat was so much better than any of the other at-bats that he's had in the postseason, and it looked like he was finally figuring things out. He had the same issue that he had in the beginning of the season where he just hit the ball hard right at someone, but I felt a lot more confident in him after I watched that last at-bat, and I really think it's just because a lefty is going to be pitching. I believe Michael Kay's show tweeted out that Kay said that an insider told him that Wells will be out of the lineup, Stanton will move up to the cleanup spot, and Trevino will be playing in game 3.
Let's be cautious of what we ask for here, right? Because I don't think it does a lot of great things for a young player's psyche to be benched in the postseason when he struggled for 5 games. Right. But also, let's also bring up the fact that it's not like Trevino necessarily killed the ball this year at the plate either.
No.
He's definitely a guy that, now Cleveland doesn't run very much. So, I think towards the end of the lineup, Roquillo can run very well. Quan can run. But other than that, you don't have a lot of really speedy guys on Cleveland's roster. So they can't really take as much advantage of Trevino, who's really struggled when it comes to holding the run game down. But also, Trevino isn't this unbelievable, crazy, great bat that can provide a spark in the lineup. He's had a terrible year at the plate when it comes to hitting. So be careful with what you wish for in these scenarios. That's all I'll say.
Right. So the pitching matchup is Clark Schmidt, who was 5-5 with a 2.85 ERA in 85 and 1/3 innings, against Matthew Boyd, who was 2-2 with a 2.72 ERA in just under 40 innings. It was 39 and 2/3. I don't know. Maybe the Yankees get to them because they've been getting to their starters and making Cleveland go to the bullpen. You haven't seen
no one's got out of the third inning.
Huh?
No one's been out of the third inning yet.
Yeah, it's kind of amazing what the Yankees have done so far. How are you feeling about Schmidt?
Nothing but confidence. I don't have any evidence that I've been given to not believe that he'll kill it. So right. I have no reason to believe that he won't pitch well.
Right.
Honestly, and I mean that wholeheartedly. Heel's the one that I'm a little more interested in.
Yes. So here are my thoughts about how I think the Yankees, or what the Yankees need to do in order to take a 3-0 lead. Obviously, they need to get to Boyd, who's a lefty. We know they've had issues with lefties in the past, but they also hit lefties in Kansas City enough to be okay. So I think they should be okay in this. I mean, 0-2 isn't an impossible hole to climb out of for Cleveland, but with the way they've played so far, they really need to tighten things up. Otherwise, it's going to be a fast exit for them.
The lefty thing has concerned me all year, really, because the Yankees are struggling against lefties. And then you look at the way that they've played, really, in the Kansas City series, and it kind of erased those narratives, right? You were concerned about the way they played lefties all year, and then Kansas City series comes, and that narrative kind of goes away. So we'll see. It could have been 2 good games against lefties against Kansas City, and we'll see if it reverses track to what it's been all year.
And Schmidt just needs to keep the Guardians from having a big inning, because they haven't really had a big inning. And the Yankees have done a good job of stopping them from doing that. They did it a few times on Tuesday night. Cole did it. Holmes did it. So they just need to stop.
They haven't allowed them to string together a lot of hits either.
Right.
Like Cleveland has gotten one hit, shut down the next batter. You have to keep it that way. Because
they have the potential to do it. You saw it against Detroit. The bookended games. Game 1. Game 5 in that series. Game 1, they came out guns a-blazing in the first inning. And then in that final game, the grand slam off Skubal knocks Detroit out. So they do have potential to play with some pop. We just haven't seen it in the first 2 games. And hopefully we won't see it in Game 3 in Cleveland. All right, coming up next, Gleyber Torres has really turned things around in the second half and into the playoffs so far. Find out why next.
Guys, do you ever feel like you need a little boost in the bedroom? It's time for you to stop worrying about your performance and get Hims, so you can feel confident knowing that you can get hard and stay hard whenever you're in the mood. Hims is changing men's healthcare by providing you with access to affordable sexual health treatments from the comfort of your own couch. Hims provides access to a range of doctor-trusted ED treatments like chewable hard mints and Viagra and Cialis for their generics for up to 90% cheaper. The process is up to 100% online, so there's no need for uncomfortable doctor's visits. Just answer a series of questions on their site, and a medical provider will determine the right treatment option. If prescribed, your medication ships directly to you in discreet packaging for free. No insurance is needed, and one low price covers everything from treatments to ongoing care. With hundreds of thousands of trusted subscribers, Hims can help you find the ED option that works for you. Start your free online visit today at hims.com/lockedon. That's HIMS.com/lockedon for your personalized ED treatment options. hims.com/lockedon. The products mentioned are chewable compounded products which are not approved by or verified for safety or effectiveness by the FDA. Prescriptions require an online consultation with a healthcare provider who will determine if appropriate. Restrictions apply. See website for details and important safety information. Subscription required. Price varies based on product and subscription plan. Remember that you can catch every pitch of the Yankees hometown broadcast with SiriusXM. Just download the SXM app and search the word Yankees.
Okay, so as I mentioned, There was an article about Gleyber Torres because, as you all know, he turned it on in the second half and he's done very well in the playoffs so far. Like, he's been a very good leadoff batter. He's been on base a few times each game. He was 3 for 5 on Tuesday. And this article was published in the New York Post. So after his rough first half, he had the All-Star break off because he was so bad he couldn't make the All-Star game. And that's, it happens to some guys. So he went to Tampa, and he said in the article that he basically tried everything. He tried to fix everything that was wrong with his swing and everything else in 3 days in Tampa. And the person who helped him was his best friend, Gio Urshela.
Yeah, the happy fellow.
Yeah.
He really he's a missed Yankee, right? I feel like Gio Urshela was a really good Yankee, and a lot of guys miss him a lot. Actually, they worked out at Gleyber and Gio's facility they have down in Tampa.
Mm-hmm.
They both own a facility that it is down there that they worked out at, which is pretty cool.
Yep. I just thought it was so funny where he was like, yeah, I basically tried to fix everything in 3 days. And we saw he put video up of himself on Instagram working during the All-Star break, which I thought at the time, okay, this is good because it was hard to watch him. He really struggled in the first half.
And he really figured things out.
Yeah.
In a massive way.
So this was what he said. He said about doing what he did. Just go to my city, Tampa, see my friend, and just do different workouts a little bit better as a player. You just forget a couple things about baseball, just enjoy and try to feel the same feeling as you felt before. Then when you get back to playing, you just try to do the right thing. So from that quote, it feels like he wasn't enjoying himself, obviously, because why would you enjoy yourself when you're doing bad? And he wanted to get that feeling back. And in that second half, or 61 games of the regular season, those last 61 games, he batted .291, so going from being a guy that you basically every time he came up figured, oh, here we go, here's another out, here's another shore out, he's not going to do anything because he was just so bad. And yeah, it was night and day with Gleyber.
Yeah, he's been tremendous throughout the rest of the year. Actually finished the year off way better than he was projected to. And again, like we said when we discussed this today on yesterday's show, has this led to Gleyber's discussion being a little more softened on whether he'd be brought back or not? Because I feel like at the All-Star break, it was a fait accompli that Gleyber was not, his Yankee career was ending.
People wanted him traded, and they knew that he couldn't be because he was doing so bad in the first half.
And now it's become a conversation of, is he definitely not going to be on the Yankees next year? I still think he winds up with a team like Milwaukee or Cincinnati or something for a 4-year deal for like $35 million, not per year, like total in the deal, maybe for 12 per year, something in that range, where it's more longer term. He takes that. The Yankees aren't giving him a longer term deal. The Yankees will give him like a 1 or a 2-year deal and see how it works out. They're not going to give him a long-term deal. We'll see what winds up happening in the offseason, but the quotes are very interesting, and it really is great to see that how much he's improved since his slow start.
Yeah. In the article, Aaron Boone said about Gleyber, I guess I'm just proud of his perseverance because nothing about this year has been easy for him, getting pulled out of a game and not playing the way he expected the first half of the season. It can get noisy here and guys can crumble. He's pushed through and become such an impact player for us here in the final couple of months. There's a lot to be said for that.
Yeah, I never know how to feel about a Boone positivity quote towards a player because that quote would have sounded the same. Gleyber could have went 0 for his last 300 in the season, and that quote would have sounded the exact same. love what I saw. Really good at bat. Saw the ball well. So it's really confusing sometimes to know how to feel about an Aaron Boone quote when a player's doing well.
Yeah. But good for Gleyber. Good for turning it around. He's really helping the Yankees out in the playoffs. He's one of their better hitters in the playoffs so far, and he's really getting things going at the top of the lineup. So, just let's hope he keeps doing it. He's batting .292 so far in the playoffs in these 6 games.
And really good job out of keeping him at the top of the lineup too, because Volpe, remember, broke out of the gate pretty well out of the top of the lineup. He was playing really well at the top of the lineup, and they moved him down. And it was a controversial decision when they did it because you wanted more time for Gleyber, for Volpe. They gave Gleyber more than enough time to figure things out, and he did. So compliment them for that also.
So there was a report Nestor threw again. He had a session earlier on Wednesday. Boone said that he could be an option for the World Series if they make it.
We'll see. I don't know. I don't think they want to throw cold water on Nestor coming back per se. I can't picture him being able to come back from this injury this quickly. I know he wants to help out. Sometimes less is more though when it comes to stuff like this. We'll see. I don't have a feel on this. We haven't had a chance to see Stroman, so I don't know what he's going to be like out of the pen necessarily either. So this is a very interesting one to me.
I don't know if we will, unless there's a blowout game and the Yankees just need to throw someone in there because they're down by 10 runs. That might be where you see him, which isn't great, but that might be the one time that you might see him. So we'll see what happens.
That's what it'll wind up being.
Yeah. So we'll be going live after game 3 and live right after game 3 within 10 to 15 minutes of the game ending.
I will not be in Cleveland. So you're not
right.
Wait for me to get home. Yeah.
He's not going to Cleveland and, won't have to fly home from Cleveland to do the show. So you won't have to stay up late to wait.
Although I might be able to jog home from Cleveland quicker than it'll take me to get home from the Bronx.
Oof. Yeah. Hey, at least you weren't heading out to Long Island from the Bronx because the Cross Bronx Expressway should be illegal. That is one of the worst highways in America. So we're going to be live after the game. Look for it 10 to 15 minutes after the game. There will be a time on YouTube, but obviously it's subject to change depending on how long the game lasts. So just keep your eye out for it. And if you're not subscribed yet, subscribe and then hit the button so you're notified when the video goes up and when the stream starts so you can join us and we'll chat. And hopefully it'll be a celebratory live stream.
And we'll be live after every game the next couple games, correct?
Yes.
Yeah. So you guys can tune in. Even on days that we normally don't do the show, we'll be live.
So yeah, we're going to do live streams after the playoff games, even on the weekend. You're stuck with us.
Sorry.
Thank you for making Locked On Yankees your first listen today. Now go check out the Locked On MLB podcast. Prepare for the Fall Classic with Sully, who has it all covered every single day. The link to Locked On MLB is in the description, so you don't need to search. It's part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And make sure you check out the Locked On Yankees postcast right here on the Locked On Yankees podcast feed, as well as streaming on the Locked On Sports New York YouTube channel. Get rapid reaction to all the biggest moments with the Locked On Yankees postcast. So that'll do it for this edition of Locked On Yankees. I'm Stacey Gotsoulias.
And I'm Brian McKeon. We'll catch you after the game.